The Marathon County Infrastructure Committee meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, number 3, public comment. There's nobody in the audience back there, so I don't think nobody called me, nobody else online. All right. Then we will move on to number 4, approval of the July 7th, 2022 Infrastructure Committee meeting minutes that are in your packet. Is there any discussion, any changes? Supervisor Robinson makes a motion, second by Supervisor Seibert. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. If there's no objection from the committee, I'm going to move the educational presentation and committee discussion issues A through D first before we get into the other parts of our meeting. No objection? Okay, thank you. All right, we have a presentation. Jim's going to introduce the speaker.
Thank you. We've been talking about GTA, general transportation aids, on and off here for the past few months. With us today is Tim Ramberg. I had the pleasure of working with Tim as a fellow commissioner from St. Croix County. Tim has since retired, but he's still staying with the program and helping out the state on different things. Tim probably knows GTA better than the state knows GTA. Tim is a numbers guy. He was St. Croix's accountant before commissioner, so Tim loves numbers like I love Tom Seibert's old fashions at the Buccaneers. So, Tim, I'll let you kind of go through your presentation here, and you can jump right in.
I also printed out, if you guys wanted to scribble, have something to have notes on. The same presentation I have on notes, so. So feel free to ask questions as we go. Thank you. Or slow me down. I get excited. Like Jim says, I like numbers. Sat in a lot of different chairs over the years, got beat up on different things. I'll share some of the ooh-ah moments that I've found as we go. But as far as GTA, I'll try to overview the program itself without getting into too many details so we can get into what I really like. Jim and I have been talking about your specific numbers and how it affects your budget. And we can play what if with some spreadsheet live if, once I get through this, and then I think that's just a great idea. Talk about me being a bean counter. Man, that was some really good information he sent me. So I hope I can share some of that and be part of that conversation as we go. And again, feel free to ask questions or banter as we go and slow me down or speed me up. Just gotta scroll. Oh, scroll. Okay. Good. For the introduction, GTA, General Transportation Aids. They are even confusing in themselves because it's the state legislature that the governor approves a dollar amount of funds that go to the county. Some go to the county, and then another pot of money that goes to municipalities and towns. But we're going to be talking about the pot that goes to just counties, and that pot is made up of the license, the registration fees, the state registration fees, and the fuel tax that pot gets. And that pot then gets busted up and spread out. And there's so many variables in it. There's a lot of up and downs in there, and it's hard to identify just one element. But hopefully today we can narrow some of them down. And that's every 2 years. And lately, for a lot of years, it's the same dollar amount for both years. That's going to be important as you do your budget. It's a static dollar amount for 2 years. And when you read in the paper that it says that you got a 2% increase, that's such a misnomer because not everybody gets a 2% increase in their GTA. It's a 2% increase for the pot. And hopefully I can share some more with that. And then you, every September, I think it is, the clerk and the highway commissioner get a document that says, here's an estimate of how much your 2023 GTA is going to be. And that's an estimate. And the reason there's an estimate is because there's a lot of changes that occur between now and the end of the year when you get when they send you a final. The final estimate comes out after you do your budget. So that's really difficult for counties, and hopefully we have some tricks in this in the spreadsheets that I have that you can look at to try to identify a little more closely what your GTA is going to be, and then project into the future what it can be if you make certain investments. And I know a couple of you have seen some of this, and we've had some conversations, John and Craig and Jim, and feel free to jump in if there's an ooh-ah moment for you. So what figures do you use when you build your budget? And that's what I'd like to share with today. Some of the guidelines that are out there, the first one is there's a 90% and 115%. There's a 90%, like this next year, your GTA can only be reduced to 90% of what you got last year. And it can only be increased by 115% of what you got last year. So right away you got a ceiling and you have a floor to move forward with on your budget. The ceiling and the floor. And those are going to be coming in, that's very important as you move forward to be conscious of the ceiling and the floor, because some counties will bump up against the ceiling, giving all the other 72 counties more money. Or if you hit your that's if you hit the floor. If you hit the ceiling, then it's the other way around. The other county, the pot's going to change as you go forward. It's just not the 2%. It's plus or minus these bumps, the maximums and the minimums. Because if that county didn't invest in their system and their 6-year average of what's in the calculation drops significantly, they don't drop as significantly. They only drop down to 90%. That's that first one. The second one on the screen is the penalty, and that's a big one. In the past, has never been a big deal, but with all the issues we've had with the perfect storms, the viruses, the people getting sick, the turnover, we've had a real hard time closing our books by May 15th or whenever the deadline is, because we get a 1% penalty for every day we're late on filing that from the general county into the state. And guess who gets penalized? We do under GTA. 1% per day up to 10 days. And guess what the 10 days mean? 10%, there's your 90%. There it is again. So and if you look at here, I have in blue, we had one county that hit the 90% last year, and we have 5 counties that hit the 115%. 5 of them hit the ceiling, so that gave all the rest of us more. Remember that. Why is that? I don't know. You guys know. We know when we go to the conference what kind of spending or what kind of investment the other counties are doing. And hence, there must have been some bonding going on or something for counties to hit that bump, that 115%. And then there's 2 counties, as you see in blue, that were penalized, that they didn't get their funds in. And they were significant. They were like $250,000 each, from my recollection. And then again, to remember that there is a 2-year lag, because when we report our 2021 data, that isn't reflected until our 2023 GTA. So the state has to have time to calculate all those things. So how does that GTA get distributed between the 72 counties? You just don't take it like when you read in the paper And to me, it's a show. Here's how much money that the state is going to give the counties. There's a big dollar amount there. You just can't take it and divide it by 72. It's a kind of a complicated formula. There's, I think, 365 or 385 lines of code or lines that the counties report on, but only 62 of them relate to our formula. And there's a numerator and a denominator. The numerator is what the legislature and the governor gave the counties. And the denominator is a 6-year average of all 72 counties' eligible costs. And in those costs is all these pluses and minuses. What they're trying to capture is the amount of money that each county invests in their own system with their own money, without outside funds, any grants or anything. So if we get a grant or outside federal or state funds, that's a reduction in our eligible costs. If we raise the funds here ourselves by either the property tax levy or the sales tax, that isn't counted as a reduction. Or when I was doing the research on county registration fees, our county registration fee is not a reduction either. So that is a locally generated source of revenue that is not in the formula. That is a great thing for those of us that have a registration fee. So that is all our funds to use, and we get credit for investing those funds on our system. So just something to remember as we go through. That is not one of the 62 lines that gets subtracted on ours. So then the SOC is what you'll hear a lot of. It's your share of costs is what they call it in the formula. So if they give us a pot of money, the same dollar amount the first year as the second year numerator stays the same, but the denominator keeps moving. And guess what? The denominator is what all of us counties invest in our systems, and typically that's been increasing every year. So if the numerator stays static and the denominator grows, the percentage is going to go down on the second year. That's typical. That's a good planning tool to know, because we're going to enter 2023 is going to be the second year of the biennium. So that's telling me on the surface that our GTA formula, the percentage will most likely go down. So we need to be conscious of that as we move into our budgets. Any questions on just the general conversation of the pot? Jim?
Tim, you might, one thing to note is that share of costs, when this was originally set out at, it was supposed to be at 28, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, the target I thought was like 30, 30%, and it was like 28% for a long time in the 80s.
Yeah, and
Correct.
we're at 19%, 19 point
Right.
something in here right now. But
Yeah,
that's how much has dropped over the years.
Yeah, and you're right, and that's a good point, because the GTA formula is supposed to be the pot of funds that the state collected, and then they share that with us. And the sharing in the past was about 28 to 30% of our costs to help us with that. And as you'll see, over the years, that has been dropping down. And it's not only the highway department costs, it's other investments that the county makes in the county highway system. 911, patrolling the county roads, there's other costs involved in it, but the majority of it is highway related investments in construction and paving and that type of thing. So again, that's a net investment of the denominator. So with that, that's where I'd like to get into the specifics of your county. And the spreadsheet that the county gets is a kind of a busy spreadsheet. There's one of them, and then there's a second one that shows It used to be on one sheet of paper, and now they bust it up, and you got to go dig it out of the GTA formula. You got to go on the website and dig it out. So we've went out and dug it out, but I tried to take the guts of the information and put on one spreadsheet. So you have it all in your face right here. And then I've highlighted in blue what I want to target your eyes to. So this first formula, these are the actuals for Marathon County for 2022, what you're getting this year for GTA. And here's how these funds, here's how the formula that backs up the dollars you're getting this year. If you notice that your GTA went down by $105,000 right away, wait, why? What happened? Well, there's several things that happened. And the first thing, as you can see, is you're within your minimum and maximum amounts up in the top box there. And I have highlighted what it was in 2021. And then in 2022, it went down that 105,000. And there's two main reasons why that happened. Number one, your 6-year average is your county's 6-year average that multiplies by this SOC number. And like Jim said, it's 19.77 this year, 19.78. And the year before it was, I believe it was higher. I have a list, I can't remember. And so, number one, that SOC number went down. But number two, your 6-year average went down as well. And 2014 was, I believe, and we'll see it in an upcoming slide, 2014 dropped off. Your reported cost for 2014 dropped off, and 2020 was added on. So 2020 was $12,869,000, and 2014, I think, was $17 million. So what happened was your investment in your system, your net investment in your system went down, and down at the bottom I have the amount that it went down, the $105,000 was $77,000 of that, $77,500 was due to the reduction in investment by the county, eating your seed corn, if I may say it that way. Growing up on the farm, a lot of times when, if you eat your seed corn, you lose the opportunity of things in the future. You lose the opportunity of growing more crops and all that. And ditto with these kinds of things. And then the $28,000 there almost is due to the change in the SOC, the share of costs. It went down to 19.78%, and that dropped your GTA by $28,000 almost. So now we know the source of the reduction. A lot of times what would happen was we would find out that our GTA went up and down. We had heard that it went up. In the paper it said we were getting more money. How come it went down? Well, hopefully this is a good explanation of why. I don't like it, but this is why. It went down, and these are two reasons. 79 or 77,000 because of the county specific change in your 6-year average, and 28,000 because of the share of cost, or basically the difference between what the state gave us and what all the other 71 counties did. Okay? So that's what was this year that generated questions, I'm sure, from Jim and the rest of you folks. And now this is one that I put together. We've never been able to really identify what the other 71, what all 72 counties number is. What is the denominator? We never knew what it was. So I went through all 72 counties over the years since 2016, and I added it up as to what the denominator was. So in 2016, the numerator was 98,400,200. That was the numerator for 2 years, for 2016 and 17. And the denominator, I added it up, it was 548 million. And that we never knew how it changed. Now we can if we add it up every year. So my first ooh-ah moment was in 2016 when I did this, and I went, wow, the SOC there in blue was 17.94%, and it dropped to 17.53%. And I thought, what was the deal with that? Well, The numerator didn't change. It stayed at the 98.4, but the denominator grew by 2.339%. All the counties invested $12 million more. Hence the reduction in that formula. This was a big ooh-ah moment for me when I saw that. So I've been tracking it for that biennium. Then the next biennium is 2018 and 19. And you see that, boy, we had a big pop of 13% increase in GTA that made the paper. And that year it happened that the counties disinvested. And we went backwards for the denominator. Very unusual that year. I don't know what happened there. But then the very next year, the counties invested, as an aggregate, $20 million. And the state invested no increase. So we went up 3.6%. And then you can see what was happening in there. You had some counties hit their minimum and some counties hit their maximum, so you couldn't just use the raw numbers. And then 2020 and 2021 biennium, for the first time I ever recall, we had 14 counties hit the maximum. Boom. They hit that maximum on the top, giving the rest of the counties more funds. That was a surprise. It was a nice surprise. Thank you very much. And so we did get up to 20.7%. That was the number that I was trying to remember. And so that what I'm trying to share here is in column D, that we now have, we can track how much the counties are investing. We already know what the state's investing. Now we can track the denominator. Hopefully this is a great tool for us to use. Now, then if we look at the last couple years now for 2022, line 12 there, it went up by 1.5%. I thought it was going to be 2%, but anyway, the state, the numerator went up by 1.8 million. So it went up from the 122 million to the 124 million. But look what the counties did. They didn't go up 1.5%. They went up 3.8%. So that share of costs went down. And then now for 2023, here's where we are today. We're trying to build, we're going to be building our budget. It's if we're not building them already. 2023, what do we use? Let's talk about this. For Marathon County, we have a 0% increase in the numerator, and what is the denominator going to do? Here's where we can play what if. And the next few screens, if you don't mind, I have in here the average of the history there of what the counties have done. Do we want to use a 6-year average? Do we want to use the last couple years? What do we want to do? And here's where, if you guys have an idea, we can plug it in there. But I plugged in a couple of Timmy thoughts real quickly here. Right now we're at 19.77% there on line 13. And because of the seven counties that hit the max and those that got the penalty and the one minimum, it would have been 19.51%. It would have been that had we not had those variations in those other caveats. The 90%, the 115%, and the penalties created it would have been 19.51%. Because of all those counties that got dinged, the rest of us got to share in it at the 19.77% number. Does that make sense? Had we not had those penalties and all that, we would have been lower yet. So with that in mind, my first thought is this coming year it's going to go down to 19.51% if nothing changes. If nothing changes, everybody invests exactly the same amount of money in their highway system, and the numerator doesn't change, which it didn't, and there's no penalties, and there's no 90% minimums. That's our first scenario is the SOC will go down to 19.51%. Okay? First scenario for you. So if you're going to build your budget, and that's all I knew, I would have to lower my GTA estimate for my budget from 19.77% down to 19.51%. And that's also saying if you guys are all investing the same amount as you did the previous year. That make sense? Okay, so I would take what is the difference? 0.2 some percent off of my GTA from yes, sir.
So a question, how does the ARPA money, does that play into this anywhere with is it a county funded? Is it a denominator?
Okay, good question. I'm not that familiar with the ARPA funds, but that would be an outside revenue, I would think, because it isn't funds that the county generated through your typical. That's a real good. We'd have to look at all 62 lines, and some of them are revenues and some of them are expenses. So I'm not real sure on that because it's a general county. It depends on where it's booked to. To me, it's where it's invested is going to benefit your formula. If you invest, let's say it's a 80-20 program, I'm used to the federal funds that come in and we get reimbursed 80% of a project. Well, we get credit for the 100%, but then we get subtracted for the 80% that we got from the feds. So actually, we get credit for 20% because we invested 20% into that project with our own funds. But as far as ARPA, I don't have a good answer for you on that. That's new to me, the ARPA funds.
We're looking right now.
Okay.
I think Jim actually looked into that.
Oh, okay,
And got an email back to me, and I'm looking through them right now.
okay,
I don't believe it counts at all against it.
okay. But that's a good question. I'll make a note of that myself, because I know these questions will come up as we move forward. I've been gone now 5 years, and that came up since then. And I was just elected to St. Croix County Board. So I'm on the board in St. Croix County right now, by the chance. So I'm a freshman and I know that'll come up there too. So I could learn from you guys on that. Very good question, thank you. So that's scenario number one, that'll drop down. And this, I wanted to spend some time on this one because I'll refer back to the denominator, and here's where I get that denominator. And in a couple slides here, I'm going to talk about the 5-year or 6-year average. So I'm going to take the average all the way back 6 years of column D as in dog. That's where we come, but we can always come back to this slide. So here's the what-if scenarios. There's the 2022 was at 19.77%. So scenario number 2 will be, remember, scenario number 1 is at 0.51%, 19.51. But scenario number 2, what if we take the last 6 years of the county's growth? So if we average the last 6 years of what the counties have done as an aggregate, it's 2.437. Sorry for the details, but that's my Excel spreadsheet for you. So the numerator is 124 million, and the denominator is 651 million, 19.04%. There's another number. So it's going to drop by 0.73%. Okay, in scenario number 2. Scenario number 3 is, what if we just take the last couple of years? Because the last couple of years are maybe more conducive to what we've been doing as a state as far as investing in our infrastructure with the bonding going on and that type of stuff. If that's the case, now it's like almost 1% that our GTA would drop. Again, all other things being equal. So right there, this is what's been behind the scenes. That numerator and denominator numbers on the left, that's always been behind the scenes. We haven't been able to find it. And now we found it. It's just a little bit of work to dig it out. That blue number, 658 million, that's a number that I'm coming up with if we average the denominator growth of 3.6. And again, when you guys go to the conference, it's that 3 point, that's where you get the feeling from all the other counties in the room what kind of investments they're making. Okay, I think that's a good question for us to ponder as a WCHA in the future. So that's kind of starting out what it would be as we're building our budget in Wausau. So in yellow on this next one, I have, I'm kind of guessing, what if? What if this happens? This is what your GTA will look like for your 2023, and that you could probably consider for your 2023 budget. So in 2021, I added up all the numbers that you guys, Jim was kind enough to send me your Form A, they call it, with all 365 or 385 lines on it. and I pulled out your 62 lines and added them together, it comes up to $17,600,000 and some $1,000 that 2021 numbers that the state will get that'll plug into your formula pretty soon now. I think September you'll get your first estimate, but I'm projecting this is what your first estimate will look like. And the reason is you got 17 million being added, and what left? 2015 disappeared, or 2015 falls off, and 2021 adds on. Remember what I don't have the pages, but 2015 was, what was that number? It was higher, wasn't it? 20 million or something like that?
21.9.
Yeah, so 21 million dropped off and 17 added. While Marathon County increased your investment from 12.8 million to 17 million, your GTA goes down. And now you know why. Because 21 dropped off. 21 million dropped off the formula, and you added 17. There's the answer. I never knew that before, and now I had the ooh-ah moment and got the tingles. But there it is, and down at the bottom, your 6-year average, because of your 6-year average went down, you should drop $141,000 in your GTA. And because of that SOC, that's the 19.51% dropped, that'll bring you down another 42,000. So in this scenario, it'll drop 183,000. If you're comfortable with that, or if you feel good enough to use that in your budget. This is scenario number 1 for next year, that the state hasn't sent you their first estimate yet, so you're ahead of the game. Then scenario number 2 is, what if it drops down to that 19.04 we talked about? That's that 6-year average, I think it was. If that's the case, now you're going to drop over $250,000. And here again, what's your feel? What are you feeling that SOC is going to do? You already know the 17 million. You already know what your county's done. Now the unknown part is, what are the rest of the counties going to do? How many are going to get penalized? How many are going to hit the 90? We don't know that. We can just maybe come up with these averages if you're comfortable. So this is kind of some what-if things, number 2. And what-if number 3 is, what if it drops all the way down to that 18.83, which was the last 2 years' worth of growth for the denominator? If so, now you're at $286,000 drop in your GTA. And what this does is affords you the opportunity, as you're building your budget, to fill the gap. Here's a gap that's going to happen on you, and how are you going to handle it? So to me, this is the tool that now you can use to move forward and cuss and discuss where the gap's going to come from, or not. And I know John had some good questions when we had the conference a bit ago, but this is one of the things I wanted to come of that. Because you guys asked the questions, I come up with this. And I think John was the champion of that one. So I don't know if that's a credit or it's your fault, John. but anyway, so that's for next year. Okay, for next year, this is what I come up with, ideas and alternatives. And then Jim talked about, well, and I'll just finish off with a couple slides here, but then I added on to this then with your gap analysis. And we'll get to that here shortly. A what if with your gap analysis. And all these spreadsheets we can do here shortly live. We can pull up the spreadsheets themselves. And I have some more beneath these, underneath, some more formulas I'll share with you. But if I just threw them at you, you'd get all confused as to what are these, because if you didn't build the spreadsheet, you get confused as to what it all means. So what does the GTA formula encourage? It encouraged to invest in your own county system with your own funds. And that's what the formula I can see does. Not only investing in your system, but constantly investing in your system. Why do I say constantly? The 115 and the 90% are dinging you, and you're getting penalized if all of a sudden you bonded and spent $20 million in 1 year. You're not going to, you're eating your seed corn there too. You're not getting that the benefit of that. And the only thing you'll get is the 115%, and then the 115%, and the 115%. Sorry, and it'll gradually come, but you've lost out on the difference the whole time you're doing that. So one of the key things a lot of counties miss is the consistent You know, if you get a windfall, that's great. But if you don't consistently invest it, this formula will ding you. I'm not saying that not to do that, but sometimes you have to. You have to, you know, you have a flood, you have to invest in things. You have a sense of urgency of things that you have to act on. You still have to manage your system. This is just one caveat that happens when it's just a result. And it's a consequence or it's a help. It doesn't, but I just wanted to share that this is one of the restraints of the formula that are behind the scenes. You don't even realize it as you're doing your management. Lance, did you have a question?
Yeah, just the last thing you said about counties are capped at the 115% each of the 6 years. That follows you?
Yes.
Okay.
Each of the year, and that 115% is what you got. It's from what you got last year in your GTA. So if you get capped at 115, now that one 115% is added for the next 115.
Can I have a follow-up?
That make
Mr.
sense?
Chair?
Go ahead.
So just as a follow-up, looking at our numbers, and I know you don't have the numbers previous to 2015 when we had that large increase to 21 million, my assumption is that we hit that 115% cap and have not realized we hit that ceiling, and that's following us for 6 years.
Yes. Until the 21 fell off, which it just did.
But there are two factors in there. One is that if you have that big increase, you're limited that first year, but it goes into your 6-year average. So you don't lose the increment above that 15% increase. But you're capped at what you get, so it really begs for a consistent approach. So when we jump from, let's say, 14 million to 21 million, we'll be capped at that 115%, but our 6-year average still goes up, so that the 6-year average will benefit from that expenditure, but when that drops down, then we're penalized. So it begs for a consistent and thoughtful approach on how we're budgeting, which is why we did that 2050 study.
Bingo, and that both sides too. You got I think, yeah, you guys got it. And I don't know if you're the only county that's getting it, but you're one of the few that really have talked about it anyway, to this level. So, and granted, we're getting into the weeds, but it's where we find the balls, is in the weeds when we're golfing. But, yes, just to recap, if let's say we went up 40% and we're capped at 115%, the next year it's 115 is applied to last year and to last year and to last year. So you're whatever for 6 years. And so many of us didn't use GTA as a tool, and this is where we can specifically talk about our specific situation for our county. And there's only so much we can control, or that we're in charge of, is our 6-year average, and to be conscious of the other things. So this is just a recap. I'll let you read that. But it's that final estimate that doesn't come out till December. But I think if you look, I'm hopeful that the 3 scenarios you got, as you get these estimates, you'll see similarities in what you just have in front of you and the estimates you'll be getting from the state. Of course, depending on that SOC, that 19.51% or whatever they're going to come up with. And I know they'll come up with one, and then next month the dang thing will change. And I think the reason is because counties have, I think, till September to send in a changed audit report for that report they sent in. They have till September to find their errors and to send in their corrections. And then and what the state's doing is finding they're factoring in those 10% penalties or the 1% penalties. They're factoring in the 90%, the 115%, and the modified annual reports that the counties are sending in. So that's hence why it's changing in my mind. There may be other reasons, but that's why you don't get the final till December. And again, I think you guys have already hit these points. What holding off means, the swings in investments, and augmenting in other sources, and then between the gaps, and then don't forget that late filing fee. And I have the questions here, and then behind it, I had, if there was other questions while we do other presentations, or you share this with folks, I just had some references for if folks have other questions. There's the statutory authority for it, and, you know, that's, I'm sorry if you ever have problems sleeping, you read that first. And then the GTA website, too. And there's those manuals that we talk about where if you have the question that we had on the funding, I think these manuals, we can find it in there in the manuals.
Go ahead, Supervisor Dickinson.
So in looking at these costs going back to 2015, where there was this, we seem to put a lot into the roads in 2015, that 22 million, our costs. And then
Yeah, we had one major road project that year, Highway E north of Marshfield.
so then we've consistently kind of gone down, in 2020 being the low, and then we kind of came back up. So I just want to be clear in my head. That's sort of the swings you're talking about, and playing into that average, et cetera. And then the other thought is, it looked like the state itself was giving less back then, and then they jumped up looking at that allocation. If I was reading that correctly. Or maybe I didn't read that correctly in that one chart.
Yeah, if I can speak to your first part, I mean, that is 100% your idea of the looking at the swings and the 6-year average. That was the impetus to the 2050 study, together with, I mean, the flip side of this coin is our GTA is changing, and we knew there was a gap that was going to come just from the costs that it takes for us to maintain our roadway system. So I will overuse an overused phrase. It's the perfect storm of things that we need to have a strategy above all else, because to your point, we can't hit up against, have a big swing and then fall back down. We need a strategy to address it.
Go ahead.
So I guess where I was going with that is then there's the interplay every 2 years with the state budget, what they're appropriating, and then how we're going to go ahead and pay for the things that we need to pay for. So we could have something budgeted, some big construction project that we had planned to do, then the new budget comes out, and we're not getting the state funds in the way that we thought we were going to. Those things play on each other every 2 years, correct? Is that a safe way of looking at it? I may have not said it real clear, but you're...
Yeah, I think so. Jim, do you have anything to add
Yeah,
on
those,
that?
you know, the big part of it is, like Tim mentioned, is you have both in what the state's putting into it, but we can't control what the other 71 counties are doing. So, you know, that kind of plays that number's got the big play right there.
And one other thing to add, in the budget book, I'm looking at the county's 2022 budget book. We did go back and give a little bit more history on general transportation aids, and you can see that they are, there's a little bit of fluctuation, and to Tim's point about what we budgeted for general transportation aids and actually what we got, because it is that guessing game. But also you can see a history of, it hasn't been a whole lot of growth. I mean, when you look back to 2013, our actual receipts were 2.914 million. And, you know, we're in 2021, our actuals were 3.227. So certainly below the pace of inflation of anything else, but certainly highway cost for reconstruction.
Supervisor Robinson.
You know, I want to take you back to a couple of budgets ago when we got the general transportation aid re-estimate right before the budget was in I'm going to pick on Romy Wagner, who's not here, but Romy's first response was to cut transportation funding by the decrease in the general transportation aids, which would have had a 6-year tail on it. So we went through a little budget 101 about the 6-year average. And it's really important that we not jump to conclusions when we get a re-estimate on our GTA that goes down. When it goes down, we need to reinvest because our 6-year average is down. And to put things in context, in 2010, we got $3,384,634 in transportation aid. In 2011, $3,366,000. So if you look at it in real dollars, not inflationary dollars, we were getting more money in 2010 and 2011 than we are today. And even though there was a significant bump, that bump in general transportation aids for the counties, because we didn't keep pace with inflation's relative, or in other counties relative to that 6-year average, we lost ground. And that's from a planning perspective, what we need to look at in leveling it out. And we have to make sure that we're going to lose that $21 million project, that $21 million expenditure. So if we want to maintain transportation aids and not penalizing going forward, we might want to reorder projects to make sure that our 6-year average stays relatively the same or grows as incremental growth in order for us to get our share of the cost.
Thank you.
With that, Tim, in the packet you have here, I didn't make the screen, but if you look at page 9, Tim, just want to maybe go through that top slide there, talk about the gap analysis. Tim punched in those numbers and would let this kind of go through how that affects us for the next 23 to 27.
Thank you. The slide presentation didn't have the last conversation that Jim and I had with the gap analysis, but it is in the handout that I handed out. I think it's page 5, slide number 13. I think slide number 13 is where it starts, on page 5 of the weenie one, and page 9 of the monster one. If you got the larger, I think Jim and I have the big sheets. I can hand this out down there. I have my bifocals on, so I don't need this big one. And if I could back up and go ahead just a second. Now, when we're talking, I was thinking while you guys were talking about the budgeting and whatnot, keep in mind, we'll get surprised in the future because there's you may get surprised in the future if there's investments in other areas or disinvestments in other areas that are not related to the highway department budget, and that is other areas that utilize the highway system, or that the highway system, the formula is trying to measure the activity on the investment on the highway system, and that includes 911, because 911 uses the system, or we use 911 on our system. Percentage of it, 40%. It used to be 50%. Now it's 40%. Keep that in mind. And like some sheriff costs, like cars and things like that, that is included in the formula, I believe, if it's booked on those lines, one of those 62 lines. So there is other areas that do get included in there. But again, the majority of what we're talking about is roads, is the investments in roads. But there is, because the sheriff's department patrols the county roads, and they spin out and to pursue vehicles on our shoulders, and we have to maintain them. So they're capturing that activity on our system is what they're doing in my mind. They don't come out and say that, but it's obvious in the formulas when I get into the weeds. So I just wanted to share that so you're not surprised if all of a sudden you are thinking this and all of a sudden something changed. Well, behind your scenes, there's been some other activity in other departments that may or may not affect it. Just to bring that up quick. So now to get going on the what ifs on slide number 13, if everything else remaining the same and we invest the same amount for 2022 as we did in 2021, because we're not done with it yet, that's the only numbers that we could think of is we use the same numbers, and then we use our gap analysis. Here's what we could see in the future. Now, if we can see into the future, I have slide number 14 is 2024, and I'll pull that up on the screen too. And on here, on the screen is more information than what's on the slide, because I've done some math down at the bottom. But anyway, so with 2024 and the previous year being what we projected, the 2.875 million, and we invest the 17.6 again, okay? We stutter it, the 17, the same number for 21 as in 22, and we just use this what if, and we use the same 19.04, this is what we could see. If everything else is the same, our GTA will go up $9,000. Okay, pretty small amount, but it's there, and the amount will be all from your 6-year average and none from the SOC change. Now, as you get your estimates, you can change that SOC change right here on the spreadsheet that Jim has, and you like let's say it what should we throw in there? Let's say 18.8%. I wonder if it'll let me. Will it let me? 18? Oh. Won't let me. Maybe I don't have the super secret password. But we could do that moving forward. I'll go on to the next slide, but yes, sir.
No.
So then and down below I have the 2016 drops off, which I can see here now it's 17, so it's really close. Right, we added 17.6 and we dropped 17.3, so that's why it's only 9. Okay, so there's the history. Then if we go to the next slide for 2025, a projection, and we invest, and I have it in column F, line number 9 on the screen. If we invest an additional $333,000, which is what your gap analysis shows, our 2023 report would show 17.9, almost 18 million. All else being equal, all the other all the other areas are the same. Our GTA will go up 110,000 for that year. And again, that's keeping the 19.04%. And here's where you can plug it in as you start to get your estimates from the state. Plug it in and play what if. And down below, you can see 2017, 14 million, 4 drops off, and 17.9 adds on. So now the spreadsheet allows you to see what's happening behind the scenes. The 14 drops off, and the 17 adds on. Now for 2026, the next slide, if you add 564,000 almost from your gap analysis, now your 6-year average jumps up. 13 million drops off and 18 million adds on. Now you're $164,000 more in your GTA. Again, I got to stress, all else being equal. All else being equal. If all of a sudden 1 year you have 10 counties that hit their 90% and they get more than the calculations allow, well, you won't have as much in the pot to work with. But just as all else being equal. Then the last one on the spreadsheets, if we go to 2027 and invest that 800,000 additional that's in your gap analysis, we're up to 19 million. And if we go down, almost 15 million dropped off in 2019, and 19 million was added on. So now we're at almost $140,000 increase from the previous year, again, at that static SOC share of cost number of 19.04. And this spreadsheet, you can play what if with it. You can change what's in. I like to color what's in blue so my eyes go to it so I know I can change that number. And so I added all them up. And if you do that, the total, I think it's on the spreadsheet here. Yeah. So from then on forward, you would have an additional $423,000 in GTA every year. Again, all else being equal, starting from 2022 to 2027 as a plan and as a program to work on. And I think that was a ooh-ah moment for me. Again, if you're able to take care of what the gap analysis is showing. I do have a couple other numbers on the spreadsheet just for my own reference. Like up at, if you see on H5 up there on the 2027 one, I got some weenie numbers there of 315, a negative 315,000. That's what the 90% minimum would be. You would have to have a drop of that much. That's the most you could drop. And the most you could increase that year is 474,000 for that year. I just have the math there, but to put that on the slides, it gets to be too much. You got all these numbers running around, so I do have them on the spreadsheet just for reference. So that's the guts of what I wanted to share.
right,
Jim,
thank
does that equal what you were?
Yep, no, thank you very much, Tim. I appreciate it. Are there any other questions, as long as we have Tim here? Or? Go ahead, Administrator Leonard.
Thank you. So one of my takeaways, and please absolve me of this if it's incorrect, but based on what Supervisor Dickinson said about ARPA funds, I mean, I know one of the strategies we've used historically, Jim applies for a lot of grants to look at, to pursue highway projects. And this is my assessment, one of the things that administration has looked at in the past is what is the highway budget, but really it behooves us not to look at the total number. It's GTA eligible expense within the overall picture of the highway budget, because we really need to have your cost column on your spreadsheet that's on the screen. That's GTA eligible cost. We still, of course, seek out all the grant funds and other things to essentially keep up with the necessary maintenance on the roadway, but we need to have a specific strategy relative to GTA eligible spending. Is that
10-4, exactly. And GTA eligible revenues. Because if you bring in outside revenue sources, that drops your GTA eligible costs. Because in the eligible all 62 lines, there's a chunk of them are revenues. So if you get like those federal 80-20 program, where we pay 100% of the project and we get 80% back from the feds on their program, that 80% drops it. So we want to have conscious of all 62 lines. And I could share with you, send you, and it's a 20-digit number or what they are. I could share with you all 62 lines. And on that book, that really detailed book at the website, it has a paragraph of what you put on that line, what the accountants put on that line that are eligible or not eligible. And it's tricky on there because some of it says it's eligible, but not for counties. Some of it's eligible for towns, cities, and villages. So careful when you read that, because it's kind of buried in there, but I could share that with you offline. There's A, B, C along the side, and I kind of shared it, but I got it too much into the weeds at the conference. Counties are called an A number, and if there's an A, then it's eligible. But if it's a C, it's not. So careful with that wording in those paragraphs.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson?
Does the airport, any of the expenses of the airport fall into the GTA at all?
Not that I'm aware of, because I don't think it's on the highway system, the county highway system. I think, sometimes you think parks might be. I don't think park roads are either. I think that was a challenge or a question somebody was trying to, and then the accountant's got to be careful where they book that, because if they have a park road that they book as a county highway, they could get in trouble. And they don't know. I mean, they're just reading that little paragraph. It isn't very descriptive. And what I've done is I've called the Department of Revenue and got specific instructions on speakerphone so we all understood the answer, because sometimes that's not clear. It's just a single paragraph of what's eligible and what you put on that line of all 62. And then at the rear end of it, it has, this isn't eligible expenses for highways. Careful, for counties or for towns, cities, and villages. So it is complicated, and that's why people just leave it alone, because it's like herding cats, or butterflies now. But it's hard to follow. So, but that's been the torture that I've had that I want to share and caution you on some of that. But I'm more than happy to email, and we can volley emails on ooh-ah moments that we've had. Careful for this, watch for that, call them on this.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions or follow-ups?
I just want to make one quick comment. Tim's been talking about that long formula. Tim did go through the county last year. We had Tim go through all of our books to make sure that we were trying to capture everything we could. So Tim said that we got everything we were trying to, but Tim has gone through that for us also.
good point, if I may. Yes, you guys did an excellent job on there. Usually I will find in the administration area that it's one line different. This line is eligible and the one underneath it is not. That one is so tricky, and you guys caught it. I mean, it went in there. And sometimes when you have turnover, if it's the auditor filling it out or your finance folks filling it out, that is a very tricky one. And I caught that in St. Croix County early on. That was my first ooh-ah that this was important, because I think it was $200,000 that made a difference for us at that time. So, and it was a $90,000 difference in our GTA at the time. I remember that. So that's why it was important to me. But you guys are doing good on the booking of it.
Thank you. Supervisor Seibert?
Question kind of a little bit off the subject, but county highway system, the town highway system, and the city highway system, that's three separate systems according to the government?
Yeah, it's three separate pots. Right.
And are they pretty much basically all the same scenarios, or is it totally different?
They are different. They are different. That's why I caution the A's and the C's in the listing there, because the towns go with so much per mile, and I don't think it matters where they booked it for the large part. They do have a three-year average thing they look at for some reason. I think that's like a 90 and 115% reason, for the top and bottom. But the cities and villages are more like us. It's the same kind of formulas, but they are the C's and we're the A's.
Okay,
Right.
thanks.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Just real quick, could you touch on highway facilities? Because we have been talking about a new facility there's a depreciation schedule with that, I think.
Oh, boy, that's a very good question. I
Brief.
do have it on the PowerPoint. If you could access the PowerPoint from the last conference, I do have that. So that was a question asked before. Very good question, and it was no and yes. A big no and a yes, a long no and a yes. The reason I say it that way is because on the surface, no, there is no place on the 62 lines for the purchase of buildings. But we look at it as the site. But over 25 years, or the life of the building, 25 years or 50 years or whatever the life of the building is, then it's a yes, because the depreciation of those buildings make their way into eligible costs. The depreciation makes its way into one of those 62 lines. So it's spread out over, so the yes is, over 25 years or 50 years, depending on the life of the building, except for the 15% salvage value. That never gets allocated in there. But it is a yes, but it's spread out so far, it's, on the surface, I would say no. But when you look into the weeds, it's a yes. So it's that's why it's a drawn out yes. But that's really hard to answer, but I think we captured that, the issue. And again, it's the whole site. It's not a building, because you got fences, and then you got land, by the way, is line number 62. Non-depreciable assets, they're called. That's 100% the day you spend the money. The day you buy that land for highway purposes, that is eligible. And it's the last line on there, by the way, number 62.
Thank
Can
you.
I follow up on that?
Yeah.
So if, for example, we were selling land that was acquired for highway expansion or highway corridors, that I take it as one of those revenue areas that's going to decrease GTA?
On the surface, I say yes. And again, I'd have to read the paragraph. It depends on where you book it. And I think that's where we are required to book it. But I would read the paragraph and call the DOA, the Department of Revenue, DOR, Department of Revenue. And there was a person, Carol Duran was the one I would call. Very good with it, very helpful. She's now been retired. I forget the name of her replacement. But that, I would advise, call them and get the answer, because you don't want to get to the GTA Audit Committee, or I don't think they have one, but you don't want to get challenged with that.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Tim, for the information. That'll give us a lot to think about and help us with the budget, so thank you.
I'll let you find it. I screwed it up on you.
All right, We're going to move on to 7B, under Education Presentation and Committee Discussion. Update on the broadband construction projects, and I'm not sure who's going to handle that. Is it going to be Supervisor Robinson?
Sure. Yesterday, we received the monthly update from Bug Tussle relative to their efforts in the county, and Kim has added it to the packet today, so we apologize for the lateness of it, but I just saw it this morning, and they continue to do work. They're looking at doing 378 miles of fiber, the 16 towers. There is a map in there showing the tower locations and the stage. 3 are on air, 7 are under construction, 7 they're working on zoning, and 6 they're working on site acquisition throughout the county. So they're making progress in Jerry and Mike.
I was gonna have them bring up the map so we can take a look at it. There's basically 2 maps in there that are worth.
Very microphone.
Maybe let you find it.
So we've been asking the providers to give us monthly updates at our broadband task force, and Gary, you're on, and others, and we've been getting updates from Charter relative to the rural, while she's pulling up the map, the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund map. They've given us a schedule for this year in that RDOF area. We're a little bit concerned about where LTD Broadband out of Minnesota is going. They were a recipient of the RDOF award from FCC. They've submitted the long form application, and they've yet to receive approval at any site across the country. 3 states have basically decertified them as being eligible to do work in their states. There's a requirement for the states to certify it. Minnesota, their home state, is evaluating whether to decertify it. I think one of the things that the Broadband Task Force will be looking at is, should we move to either LTD moves ahead with their project, or we need to decertify that auction bid. And the reason for that is that there are certain federal programs and federal funding programs that we are ineligible for because it's designated as a RDOF area, Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, and that's a significant portion of the Western County. So we're looking at that. Serenity is near completion of the grant that they received from the PSC last year in the Nori Lake area. Frontier and Bug Tussle are awaiting Public Service Commission grant agreements for the work this year. 10,600 premises will be served by Frontier, and about 650 by Bug Tussle in the Knowlton Cronawater area. So there's a lot going on with those grants. But what we have before you is the work that is part of that $25 million conduit bonding program that we worked with them on and agreed to last year. And that's where, and I'll turn it over to Jerry.
Yeah, thank you. I'd kind of zoomed in on this map. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the county related to broadband right now, John's talking about.
If I could
Go
just
ahead.
quickly, one of the things we want to do is we want to pull together a map that shows where we have gone with our past grants with Public Service Commission, where we are with the RDOF, where we've got agreements with the FCC, and where we are with the upcoming PSC grants and with the Bug Tussle work. So you've got an overview of it so we can match that with the speed test. But Jerry's right, we've got a lot going on.
Yeah, I just want to point out a couple things that would be useful, and you guys can see this if you drive around the county. So there's like about 4 different projects going on right now. So that are where there's construction going on. So the first one John talked about is the PSC grant that Serenity is doing, and they're putting a fiber run from Hatley down over in this area. They're working on that right now. The second project that's going on is Charter's RDOF money. Charter's building stuff out south of Marathon right now. They have crews on Evergreen, County O, N, Double N, 107. They're in that area. So if you see crews in that area, that's most likely Charter. Bug Tussle has 2 projects going on. One they've started, one they haven't started. This is the big 378-mile fiber project. This is the piece that they're working on right now. They're putting in orange conduit. It's called interduct. They have pretty big sections of this down. I'm aware that, yes, Tuesday they had 3 crews out, and they were in this area. They're right where the Rib River Falls is, and then just north of there in 2 other sections. And so they're continuing to work in this area mainly right now. This purple stuff is where they're doing engineering and design work on. I believe that it's a kind of a high priority for them to get from their, this is the, pretty close to the town of Maine, this is sort of the village of Maine's offices. They're going to be building this pretty soon, this purple piece. They're doing that fairly early because they need to get this path done so they can have a loop here. They're also on contract with AT&T to get to a couple of AT&T towers. One of them is on this route, so they're trying to get to an AT&T tower over here that's currently served with radio backbone, and they want to get microwave on it. So if you want to go out and see them, they're here. Charter's in this area. Serenity's over in this area. Those are projects going on. And then on the tower side, they have 4 towers that they're building right now. I think that was above it, right? Yep. Yeah, thank you. This is in your packet as well. These are all color-coded. The 3 green ones are ones that they've already built and they're live. So Bevent, Leather Camp, and Little Chicago, and I believe John and I covered that last time that we were talking to you about this. They're currently, this tower is, I believe, almost completely built, Sunset. They started construction over here on this one. They started construction on this, I don't know if they started construction on this Hamburg one, but they're close to it. We have recently asked them, and these other 2 orange ones are the other construction towers. We've recently asked them to expedite this particular tower, which is on County C. And you may recall in front of this committee in May, we approved some corrections to road alignment and right away on Ingle Road in the corner of Ingle and C right here. That's where that tower is going to be. If you're a member of public safety as well, you'll be aware that Bill Milhausen is going to be talking to you next week. We have tower issues that we're going to elaborate on in public safety on a tower that we have public safety equipment on really close to this. So we've asked them to expedite this tower that they have agreed to, and hopefully will be done by beginning of September. So if you want to see one, there's 3 live ones, and then I believe this one's up, but not live yet. Any questions? And the other thing I was going to mention is John and I have been tracking the legal and grant stuff at the federal level. We've been exchanging emails back and forth. LTD's definitely gotten basically denied in a couple of states that they were originally approved in. They're being contested in Wisconsin now, and both LTD and Charter got fined, not for Wisconsin projects, but they got fined for being behind schedule on 2 or 3 other states. I don't remember. You may remember where they are. I don't. Charter got fined in a couple of other states. I'm actually, Charter's moving pretty well in our county, so I'm pretty pleased about that. The big thing that's going to end up coming up as a big discussion is all of that federal money, where RDOF was $9 billion, in the infrastructure bill that was passed recently is $45 billion. And they have not decided how they're going to distribute that yet. So I would expect that the biggest discussion over the next probably 12 months is things related to how they decide to distribute that $45 billion, because that's a lot of money. So I would expect us to, John and I will definitely bring that in front of the committee in the future. That help? It's a lot of good physical stuff. If anyone's driving around now, you can actually see stuff being built.
Supervisor Sabbert, use your mic, please.
In our area, the southwestern part, are they actually putting fiber underground or just a conduit?
Which project?
Well, that's that whole area, all the way from Marathon. When I drive, you see them putting the conduit
Yeah.
in, but you don't see anybody putting.
I haven't seen any
Actual fiber
in there. I
in.
think there's a little fiber on Springbrook because it looked like they put in the equipment huts and closed them up already. Otherwise, all of that stuff that you're talking about on N, Evergreen, 107, all I've seen is empty conduit, and they don't even have the vaults in yet. So that's when you see a chunk of conduit kind of sticking out of the ground about 6 feet usually. And then a lot of times you'll see two close together like this. It's because they run this way and a run this way are intended to end up with a vault there. So if you drive by that later and the orange things are gone, it's if you get out of your car and you look, you'll probably see a vault pretty close to that area.
I know those crews are working 7 days a week and they're there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they're still working at 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah, and they're hitting rock they've hit a lot of rock on Double N. If you drive on Double N out by where the town of Red Mountain has its yard waste site, they spray painted on the road, on Jim's Road. They spray painted on the road, rock, start, rock, end, rock, start, rock, end, because they have to have another crew come in with a rock busting equipment, and Jim might elaborate on that, to go through rock sections. So most of it doesn't have fiber in. I think Springbrook does.
Thank you, Jerry. Any other questions for, go ahead, Supervisor Robinson.
I'm having a tough time accessing my email, but there's a lot of signs that are going up on the internet all over the county. That's with a company that we haven't done work with historically. Jerry, do you remember who that was?
I do not remember. I had to look them up. They're out of a county, they're like south of Wood County, whatever that next county is down. They're down there.
But that is not anything associated with Bug Tussle, with Charter, or any of the entities, the ISPs that we're dealing with. They're putting a lot of those signs for internet call.
Those little, I think they're yellow, and I've seen some green ones.
And they
have,
put them on some
the local
signs,
number.
and we've had some of the,
Bug Tussle is also advertising, though, John. They've got
all in the right of way. And
Bug Tussle is also advertising. They've got Facebook ads running, and they've done direct mailers.
But they're not putting the signs in the right of way. So when you see those and people ask about those are not anybody we're familiar with, and aren't doing it with permission.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jerry.
They put them next to the political signs? In the right of way?
Can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
All right, if there's no other questions on that, we'll move to 7C, update on Workday and related projects, and that's, Jerry's also going to take that.
Yeah, this is the project that we've talked about a couple of times. I just wanted to give you guys a brief update on it. We're in the phase right now where we're doing a lot of the testing of the configurations. We've certainly found things to work on. There's a lot of activity going on it. We probably one of the most useful things we had recently was I talked to the Chet Streeb from the North Central Technical College, who just recently went to Workday. They just went live July 1. And got some ideas for him to help make sure our project stays on schedule, and we're going to be talking about that on Monday with the team. I think that'll be helpful. The teller cashiering project is pretty active, and that's on schedule to go live at the city at their customer service counter in late last September, early October. What else? We are still looking for additional contractor resources. We're using a website called Upworks, which is, if you haven't heard of it, it's there's all these people that are now part of the world of just private contractors, and there's a number of websites that are cater to finding them and hooking them up with people that want to use them. And so we've got 2 contractors right now that we've hired through Upworks, and we're looking for 2 more. Any questions on the Workday project? I'd be glad to answer them.
Are there any questions? Okay.
Lance, you have anything? You've been in a couple of meetings.
No, nothing to add. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you. All right, we are now going to move back up to number 5, policy issue and discussion for and possible action. 5A is review of the draft changes for the strategic plan that are in your packet, starting with 8.7. Hope everybody have time to review that. Are there any changes? Supervisor Robinson?
As it relates to A1, and I would suggest that we modify that and delete the language after the delivering a countywide high-speed internet access, comma, and delete the including copper or fiber copper and others. And then also all the way through the comma on emerging technologies, and then retain with a particular focus on addressing underserved areas, and I would also like to put unserved areas, because those are the terms that drive the PSC and other grants. We have areas where there is no internet, and those are unserved. But the reason is we've got copper in there. copper isn't the method going forward, and I don't know that we want to limit ourselves to the type, but I think what we're focusing in on is the approach. So I don't see that as adding value, and I'd hate to have somebody come in and saying, well, your strategic plan says copper, and we invest in copper, and that would not be, I think, a wise investment for the future. So I would propose that we delete that, including fiber, through the comma that right before with particular focus on addressing, I would insert unserved and underserved areas.
Thank you. As far as strategy A, do you want to change the whole thing or just those parts?
Those parts.
Okay. Okay, all right. Any other comments? Go ahead.
And then I would also have a change to under C. We have developed financial incentives. I would just delete the word financial. There are some other things that the county can do relative to its Dig Once policy and becoming a broadband forward community. And so I think we're looking at how do we incentivize behavior with or without money, with or with policies. So if you delete financial, we still have that ability, but expands our role.
Go ahead. That's it? Okay. Is there any, Supervisor Seibert, do you have some?
No,
Oh.
I was just waiting.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's fine with the revisions for that. Does anybody else have any suggestions? E's okay?
Sure.
Go ahead, Jim.
Are you just, excuse me, are you just on 8.7 now, or are you on 10.12?
We're on 8.7.
Okay, thanks. Come back to me.
Supervisor Dickinson?
I just had one question on the date of 2024 for the outcome measure for develop and improve data inventory. I don't know why that would be 2024. I can't recall why that was. Why shouldn't it just be 2023 so that we'd be consistent?
Or 2022.
Or 2022?
Yeah, you want 2024 or 2023?
Great.
Or 2022?
It's like an auction.
I think it's something that we've been talking about trying to get on our website. And I think it's something that we can do by the end of the year if we're revisiting it. So I think 2022. Sarah's been doing, we have some of that information, a good deal of them, and it will be an ongoing iterative process.
Okay,
That's fine with me.
thank you. So it's 2022. All right, any other modifications or changes? Outcome measure that are listed on there? Okay, so is 8.7 acceptable to the committee for the recommended changes to the executive committee? Okay. All right, then moving down to 10.12. Are there any suggestions for changes, or are those acceptable modifications?
I have a question, I guess. On outcome measure number 2, the second bullet, convening meeting of local municipal leaders, elected, appointed, gather feedback, safety concerns. We do already host the quarterly safety meetings with elected and citizen members, so that's part of the state statute. We just had the meeting yesterday, so that meeting already is going on.
So put continue?
It's part of state statute, so I don't think you have much choice.
We can still state it, I believe, but. How often do you do that, Jim?
Quarterly.
Quarterly? Okay, any Supervisor Dickinson?
Maybe the change to that would be not convening a meeting, but reporting back to infrastructure after, on after a meeting or after 2 meetings or something like that.
I can make that change. How frequently, Jim, how you hold those quarterly? So how, from this committee's perspective, how frequently would you like a semi-annual or an annual or every quarter?
Easier if you just did right after a meeting and.
Okay, we can do. Is that, if that's acceptable to committee, I can make that change. Okay.
Supervisor Robinson?
I'll move that we recommend these changes incorporated in our discussion today to be forwarded to the executive committee.
Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Dickinson. Right, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. First committee done with this, so. Moving on to 5B, purchase of property for possible future building sites. For this agenda item, the committee may consider a motion to go into closed session. Is there a motion from anyone to go into closed session? Motion by Supervisor Robinson.
I will move that we go into closed session pursuant to Section 1985, Parent 1, Parent E, for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties or conducting other specific public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require closed session, to it, update discussion regarding the purchased property and potential future county facility building site.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Dickinson. Okay, we'll need a roll call vote on this. Kim, if you could call the roll.
McEwen,
Aye.
Dickinson, Gisselman, Hardinger,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Soibert, Straub. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now in closed session, so if you want to shut your mics off.